Up until episode 5, Baylan and Shinhati were pretty much a mysterious duo. We didn't know much about their origins or what their agenda is, but episode 6 circumvented all that. It actually revealed much more than I actually anticipated at first, because Baylan starts to communicate a lot with even Shinhati, who appears to not have all the info. This means that Baylan has been thinking about this a long while, and even Shinhati is now surprised by what Baylan is uncovering. There is a dark presence coming, something more than Thrawn and the Night Sisters, because we clearly see that Baylan has that goal in mind and has come to Peridea with this particular mission, uncovering the secret. Long gone are the days where the dark side was against the light side and all that. Star Wars has now evolved into something different. You see, Thrawn, for example, stands apart as an enemy who is notably a tactical genius instead of being force sensitive or a dark sider. He finally made his live action in episode 6, played by Lars Mikkelsen, and we see that he is a bit different than his animated counterpart. And yet, as exciting as Thrawn's return was in episode 6, it increasingly feels that Star Wars and Dave Filoni is pulling something of a bait and switch. At times, it kind of seems that Thrawn will not be the true villain of this series. As I said, Baylan Skoll's agenda was finally revealed, but even before this episode, we know that he clearly saw Morgan Elsbeth and Thrawn as just a means to an end. Baylan believes that he will find something else once he finds his way to Peridea, and now he has. Having been trained by the Jedi, Baylan knows many of the legends of Peridea. He actually says this to Shinhati.
If the old stories are true.
With these old stories, he clearly believes that he can change the fate of the galaxy through his sheer determination. That's why he's come to this place. So what is this old story, if it is true, and what is calling to him? This suggests that he has traveled to Peridea to maybe find a being from Star Wars legends. This being was one of the more dangerous dark side foes the Jedi had ever faced. It's been 6 episodes, and Baylan has been keeping his cards close to his chest, refusing to tell even as we see Shinhati more than he feels she needs to know at the time. He finally explains a little about his agenda in episode 6, revealing he believes galactic history is locked in a cycle between the light and the dark, a power that is fleeting ultimately. According to Baylan, this cycle began at this place, and he hopes to find something that would break it forever. You see, Thrawn essentially in episode 6 sends them on a suicide mission, and Baylan is not stupid enough to not notice. He realizes what Thrawn is doing, that Thrawn is trying to get rid of them, but Baylan seems completely unconcerned about the possibility that they will be stranded here on Peridea, largely because he seems to believe this is where the most important event will take place. He goes on to say that he senses something stirring, a powerful presence calling to him, and it is presumably this what drove him to release Morgan Elsbeth from prison in the first place and help her on this journey. Remember that back in the first episodes, he told Shinhati that what awaits us when we find Thrawn is unimaginable power. Retrospectively, now that we see who Baylan is, we know that Baylan is not after power like Thrawn is or the Imperials. He's after something different. So what does he mean? By the way, he even knows that the Night Sisters are scared. He believes that Thrawn and the Grandmother are fleeing a power even greater than themselves. He says so to Shinhati.
They seem eager to leave this place. Maybe we should too.
Perhaps they flee a power greater than their own.
But wait, there's more. You see, Baylan wasn't the only one who sensed this call to Peridea. In Chuck Wendig's Aftermath trilogy, one of Palpatine's advisors noted he too sensed something calling to him through the Force. The Emperor believed it came from the unknown regions. This in turn led to attempts by Palpatine to explore the vast space. It's quite possible it came from something far beyond his galaxy. If Palpatine spoke about this just a little, then Baylan is finally, I think, confirming it. This also explains why Sabine did what she did. If she is to be Force sensitive, then Sabine definitely sensed an urgency to find Ezra quickly before this entity is released on Peridea. The Grandmother others talk about the thread of destiny. Hu Yang suggested too to Ahsoka that Sabine's decision to give up the star map to Peridea was the only choice she could make. You see, some dark presence could well be manipulating all these events, imposing its will on others to ensure it is freed from Peridea. This is why I think we have to conclude that this secret entity could be the Star Wars Legends gargantuan villain ABELOTH. It is a chilling possibility that in these next episodes, Dave Filoni will shift the attention from Thrawn to a being called ABELOTH, one of the more powerful entities ever seen in Star Wars. She was known as the bringer of chaos. In Legends, ABELOTH was once a servant of the Mortis gods who became the mother, helping keep the balance between the light and the dark sides that they embodied. ABELOTH sought immortality, and although successful, the quest tragically led to her corruption. In those old stories that Baylan is talking about, the Mortis gods imprisoned ABELOTH in the Maw, the black hole cluster near the castle seen in Solo a Star Wars story. So it's entirely possible that the canon version of ABELOTH was instead exiled to Peridea, a place from which she could not return to the galaxy. Even Purrgil only come to Peridea to die, so there is no method for her to be released. Just as in Legends, ABELOTH could have been affected by changes in the balance of the Force, notably by the rising of Palpatine and his empire. The dark side rose to power, and the light was definitely darkened. Once this happened, in canon, it could be explained that the moment she sensed it, she started stirring, reaching out with her power to ensure that someone comes and frees her from this prison. I say this because, as I said, episode 6 introduced a whole lot in Peridea. And the way Dave Filoni thinks and how he writes these storylines and these episodes, there is something to this, because he could have easily just pitted Ahsoka against Thrawn, Ezra against the Night Sisters. There's just a simplicity that could have been made, but Dave Filoni instead chose to insert Baylan and Shin Hati too, meaning that something is not completely right. While these two sides are duking it out, Baylan will disrupt everything. Baylan is out for his own agenda, and this agenda could be ABELOTH, because it would be the perfect enemy for Ahsoka Tano, who herself links to these cosmic beings known as the Mortis gods. We just saw her in the World Between Worlds. In fact, Ahsoka was one of the 3 Jedi who encountered these gods. She was even killed by the son, and she was then resurrected by the daughter. So she has close interaction with these gods, and ABELOTH being the mother, we did not see her in the Clone Wars series, but we might get to see her in the Ahsoka series. There's also, of course, a possibility that it could be the Bendu, because we saw the Bendu interact with Thrawn too, but we're going to discuss that more thoroughly. It might seem like a stretch, but even Peridea at some point seemed like a stretch, and Dave Filoni made it happen. Successfully, I might add. Everybody is loving episode 6, and I can't wait to see what's in store for episode 7 and 8. Will it be the ABELOTH, this ABELOTH character that is finally unleashed into canon, or will it be the Bendu, the resurrection of Bendu? He perhaps coming back, and he is the entity that Baylan is talking about. In fact, he is talking about ending the cycle between the light and the dark, the fighting, the infighting that's been happening for so long that it is actually causing damage. This is what Darth Treya believed, that the light and the dark is making people suffer all across the galaxy because it's choosing sides. So she actually made an enemy of the Force. She hated the Force itself. This is what kind of the Bendu represents. She is neither dark nor light, as we saw in Star Wars Rebels. He even predicted Thrawn's defeat and then disappeared in the 3rd season of Star Wars Rebels. If indeed it is the Bendu, then I think Thrawn's fate has to be something he can't really predict or anticipate. Then I think it is fitting for him to have another discussion with an older Thrawn, now a more mature Thrawn who respects the Force and what the Bendu represents. You see, call me naive, but I think that Thrawn's fate has to be something that Thrawn cannot predict or anticipate. This is how he actually died in Legends, and it's how he should die in canon too, if we ever get to see that. He's probably one of the greatest military strategists in the galaxy, and in this other galaxy too, so he's not just going to be taken out in a space battle or go down with his ship like some second-rate admiral. Honestly, I think at this point, he's gonna be sticking around for a while. So talking about his death might be a great, interesting point, how it will actually happen, because Dave, I think, is pondering that right now, even for his movie. He's a fan favorite character right now, Thrawn is, and he's currently the strongest link we have between these two galaxies, which may of course be featured also in the Dave Filoni upcoming movie. I mean, he has only begun to scratch the surface of Thrawn's background and his true motivations. They probably threw that line of the Bendu in Rebels just to make him say something menacing and foreboding before he just vanished, something that would unsettle even Thrawn. And from that point on, Thrawn has understood a lot of things. Now he respects it because the Force has constantly shown to him that it is beyond his scope even. I don't know, what do you guys think? Is it ABELOTH or the Bendu?